So I've been working a little bit on the arms and other bits, and then in a minute here I'm going to put some blue stuff on these eyes and probably on the silver bit here before I go put a matte varnish on this head. So that's what I'm planning to do today. But I thought I would try taking some lacquer thinner, which naturally smells terrible, but it's useful stuff. I'm going to see if I can use that to erase some of the overspray where I've still got white on this glossy backdrop. Well, this is working a little better. Don't know why. I don't want to remove the primer later if I can avoid it. Honestly, if I can even just knock this overspray back, I think it'll help a lot when I go to put the next coat on. Well, that still knocked it back a little bit, so I can probably work with that now, I think. So I also just painted in the Obi sash with Tamiya Purple X16. And Tamiya, in my opinion, is a much better paint through an airbrush than it is with a brush. So, because you do end up with some spaces that, even though you put it on smooth and sort of thick, you do end up with some places where it kind of gaps. And sometimes it's hard to tell because it's got a really glossy look when you put it down, and then you can't see where the gaps are until that has started to dry a bit. So, well, for now I'm going to set that aside. I'm going to make a couple little balls. I'm just going to stick this on. Yeah, that's probably twice as big as what I'm going to need. Let's see if I can cut that. So I probably will yet go in and just dab on some clear varnish on top of this, but I want to save some of the original varnish coat on this. So it's not super critical, but so yeah, we'll go put some varnish on that. This is probably a little premature of me because I just put the varnish on this. I think the silver looks okay. I did protect the eyes. There's a little bit of silver here, but I'm just going to take, this is Tamiya Clear. They have a whole range of clears of different colors, orange, red, green, blue, yellow, I think. I used them a lot when I was working primarily with armor models and that to do like signal lights and stuff like that. But this is a nice color, like if you're working on a piece of armor or like a truck or a vehicle or something and you got a mirror, you can hit the mirror with a layer of like Molotow or some other really high shine chrome type of product, and then just put a coat of this on it, and a couple of coats of this, and it'll kind of act like a mirror does in real life, because at least mirrors used to be glass in front on top of silver, so it kind of works the same, at least in my opinion, and I've been happy with the results. So I feel like this is okay, but I'm going to hit it anyway just because I've got the bottle out, and I want to create some texture contrast between all of this satin finish that's going on here. It doesn't need to be a lot, it doesn't need to be everywhere, it doesn't have to be a perfect coat, you just have to give that sense of reflectivity, and on metal it also helps the metal seem more metallic. So I think I got just a little bit too much on her lip here. So I'm going to see if I can rescue that back just a little bit. So it's already starting to set up. Now you can use like UV resin or something like that on here. It should work fine. The thing is, I'm not sure, like long term, if UV resin is going to crack or yellow or do some weird funky thing. So, but I have been using this for years, so it's what I've got and it's what I'm comfortable with. So, and that's a lot of times what makes it work really well on modeling. So let me see if I can get a good view of her face for you. So yeah, there's some issues there, like under like a real high close focus that would show some grain and texture and stuff, because I didn't really sand these to a high extent, and I'm okay. So what I've decided to do is, this is Mr. Hobby, Mr. Surfacer 1000. So it's essentially, it's a primer, and you can thin this down. I think this thins with lacquer thinner, but don't quote me on that. But you can thin this down and spray it through the airbrush, and it makes a really nice base as a primer coat. And the number, the 1000, indicates that it's got a very fine texture to the pigment. So they also make a 500, and I think they make a 2000. And there may be times when you want to spray paint on a texture, or you want it to be smoother. In this case, I was able to get a little bit better as far as removal of that purple overspray from when I was spray painting this, but I wasn't completely satisfied with it, and I was afraid that it would still be a little bit splotchy and show through when I go to paint over this. And I am planning, I think at this point, to do just a brush paint on the top of this, but I'm going to be using the same color, which is light blue, that I used on her hair. And I don't want her hair to be the exact same color as, I don't know exactly what you call this wrap. It's part of the whole Obi situation, I guess. But I didn't want to have them be exactly the same. So I thought I could put down a new primer coat, and then when I paint on top of this, the paint will be at least having a more consistent look to it, hopefully. So I'm going to let that dry for now. the yellow part of her OB is looking, or where that'll go, which is this right here. I think that's looking fine, so I'm not going to mess with coating that right now. I'm just going to let that dry, and then maybe tomorrow I'll come in and hit this part and these parts, and then I'll consider what I want to do as far as the rest of this, because I have yet to get this back part, which is also going to be the sky blue or the light blue. This part's going to be the light blue as well, this little collar thingy here. And this is going to be yellow, and then I think these are like a very light gray blue, these little ribbons, and then I'm going to paint the bells completely black, and then I'll probably mask and hit those with a spray paint. Probably I'll use one of the all clad like pale gold or brass or something like that. I mean, they're bells, so I don't think gold's quite right for them. I think a brass will probably work just fine. So that's the plan for now, but I think for today I am going to call it a place to stop and let things dry. So I'm starting the work on the back here, and I've taken and masked up the rest of this, and I also masked all the raised shapes on here. This was just a real challenge to mask up, and I'm not the best at masking in the world anyway. I found that this stuff, the Abteilung liquid mask, ABT115, seems to be working a little better than the mask off from Humbrol. So that's something. I mean, like I say, I don't do a lot of masking, so and what I have done, the Humbrol has usually worked pretty good in the past, so I was a little disappointed with how it was working on this. But I'm going to go ahead and start unmasking this in preparation of putting a coat of varnish on this. Also, I'm going to see if there were any like hidden areas of overspray or anything on here. So I've just got some cling wrap that I used to wrap around a lot of it, and then I've just got some of the yellow frog tape to try to keep things in place because it doesn't want to stay. It's not as clingy as I would have hoped, I guess. So I'm trying to be careful with some of this because the paint seems to be dry. I just don't want to like inadvertently move something somewhere I don't want it. Every once in a while I'm just checking my fingers to make sure I don't have any paint that hasn't dried stuck to my fingers, so I don't transfer it to the rest of the model by mistake. I would not characterize this as a fun unwrapping. I got a little bit of overspray there. That was the area I was most concerned about because that was the area where the tape was coming up. So I ended up using a piece of paper to try and do a card mask while I was airbrushing, which one piece of cling wrap. It was a huge piece, bigger than I really needed. That's not good. Have to glue that. Looks like a clean break though. So yeah, missed a little bit up here that I'll have to brush in, and then I'm going to try and clean this off if I can. Let's see, where's my... Let's use this stuff. So I'm going to try and clean up all of this masking fluid. Yeah, these little dots on the back, I wasn't even going to try to tape those. So they were just masking fluid. And I've got all of these things here that I'm probably going to hand paint yellow. And there's going to be some holes in the middle of this that I'm going to have to fill in, because I could only confidently cut the tape so much. Have to do a little bit of fill in there. Rid of all of this used tape. Okay, so that's my fixing color. Let's grab a little bit of this and see if I can agitate this airbrush up without removing the layer underneath. That would be nice. Looks pretty good. Okay. Grab this. Nice point on that. I'll go in and very carefully do some touch-up. So it looks like that just rides on top. Wasn't sure about that when I was masking. just trying to get a clean line, but it's a little hard because there's enough flex in this that kind of wants to bounce a little bit. Oh, a little bit there. Okay, so where we're at now, I have painted the accent on the back of the bow here, and I've put a matte finish on that. I've also painted the gold on the bells, and I've painted up the ribbons. I painted the little white part of the little sash there, which actually was a mistake. I could have easily masked that with tape because it's a straight raised line, but I went ahead and painted it with a brush, and it's okay. There's a little bit of a miss, but that's okay. I can live with that. So where we last left off, this bell had broken off, and it happened during the process for masking for all of this stuff on here. So that was an odyssey getting that glued back on, and so I'm going to enter into a little bit of a rant. So to try to address that, I used, well, I didn't use that, that's debonder, but I used all of these different kinds of glue. So 3 kinds of super glue with kicker, I used UV resin with a black light. I used 5-minute JB Weld for plastic. I used a little bit of actual 3D printing resin with a black light, and nothing wanted to stick. I ended up holding, very carefully holding that piece. Oh, and I also pinned it as best I could. There's not a lot of thickness left on these things right here, so I did the best I could to pin it. And that didn't work. So I ended up taking bamboo skewers on this foam and creating a scaffolding that could hold it in place where I left the JB Weld to cure overnight. That worked, sort of. So today it started to come loose again, and I had to hit it with super glue again. So that was a thing. Now, just as I was starting to film here, the lens cap, when I was trying to take it off the camera here, the lens cap fell and knocked that bell off. So now I'm going to try and glue that again. So hopefully this will go a little bit better. We will see. I don't know how long I'm going to actually try to film this. But yeah, I know that this resin was all fully cured, so that was not the issue. So yeah, that was, I don't even know how to begin to explain that. So let's figure out the way that this goes together. It's like that. So I'm just going to take a little bit of the super glue. And this is not helped by the fact that I just put varnish on this. So that means it's a little bit sticky to hold, so I'm trying to be very careful because the matte finish will come off. Alexa, set timer for 2 minutes.
2 minutes, starting now.
This is supposed to cure in like 45 seconds, but the other day when I was doing this, I was holding it for like 5 minutes and it wasn't sticking. And the JB plastic weld that's supposed to set up in 5 minutes, I held it for 30 minutes twice and it didn't stick. Okay, so I'm not touching that now because I got it to stick. I remembered I had some gel super glue upstairs, so I ran up and got that. And so that makes the 4th super glue I've used to glue one of these things on. So why this was not working any better, I can't tell you. I've used super glue so many times and it works. So yeah. Anyway, so I'm not going to touch that. But as I mentioned, I believe, so I'm not really planning to try and freehand all of, push this out of the way a little bit, all of this stuff on the purple. I still have to do the arms and the sleeve thing, and that's pretty much all I've got left to do. But I don't think I'm going to try and freehand that. One, I don't have a really good view of what it's supposed to look like. And the other is, it terrifies me. But I may try to put these little 4-pointed things on the breast area. So that may be a thing I will do, but for now, I am not touching this. I'm going to let this sit overnight, cure up, before I do anything else.